It would have been something akin to cruelty to force anyone else to endure what the Cooper family had to offer. Don't get me wrong, I'd tried to have a boyfriend. When I was younger, I'd convinced myself not once but twice that I could overcome the past and all the ugly issues that surround my family. But just as I started to give my heart, began to believe I could actually trust another person, something happened and I retreated to my fortress of solitude. Twice, as I mentioned. The other day, I figured I'd spent something like 400 hours in therapy to learn that I've got trust and abandonment issues. I could have figured that out on my own, saving myself time and my father a great deal of money. Mark's grin drew me back into the present. I need to consider your offer, I said, trying hard to sound nonchalant about the entire matter. It wasn't every day that an offer of this magnitude came along, and frankly, it would be the answer to a lot of my problems. However, it would also cause problems. For instance, I would need to leave Boston and move to New York City. That would mean leaving my sisters. Take as much time as you need, Ron said, getting up from the table. His assistant, Madge, quickly gathered the papers he'd left and got to her feet. Madge had been working here nearly as long as the publishing house had been in operation. Rumor held that she would retire at the end of the year, but, as we'd seen with numerous sports figures who retired only to reappear the following season, I didn't believe Madge was going anywhere. Mark can further explain the benefits, Ron said as he moved to the door. I have a 4 o'clock across town and I need to leave. Good to see you again, Bailee. And just as quickly as he'd entered the room a half hour earlier, he was gone. I saw Mark's assistant, Sandy, peek into the room. You two want any coffee? I'm making a run. I smiled. A skinny latte sounds great. Make mine a mocha latte, Mark declared. Sandy nodded. Be back in a jiff. Once the door was closed, I turned to Mark. Did you know he was going to do this today? He smiled and ran his hand through his wavy brown hair. I did. I suppose I should have mentioned it, but I thought you might prefer to be surprised. You know I hate surprises. I leaned back and studied him for a moment. Mark and I had a history that went back several years, and in the course of that time, I'd never failed to appreciate his rugged good looks. Well, you know these opportunities are few and far between. You'd be in charge of all the freelance projects and represent those editors at the editorial meetings. I know, Mark. Believe me, I feel rather honored that your family would take a chance on someone as young as me. Well, we kind of like you around here. Which in and of itself complicated matters. Mark liked me, and I liked Mark. Maybe too much. He had the heart of a poet, the mind of Einstein, and the face of... well, let's just say the man was definitely dealt a fair hand in the looks department. Several business magazine covers featured his impish grin and smiling blue eyes, and rumors buzzed that a top fashion magazine wanted to cast him as the spokesperson for the hottest new clothing line aimed at career-minded women. Look, why don't you stick around the city this weekend? Mark leaned toward me. You can stay at the apartment Dad mentioned, the one you'd be offered if you take the job. You can get a feel for it and see what you think. You and I could take in a show, maybe do some sightseeing or go to the art museum. Then on Sunday you could go to church with me. And there was the other reason I needed to be careful where Mark Delahunt was concerned. He had all these nicely arranged beliefs in a God who cared and loved him enough to intercede when bad times threatened. That was a God I didn't know, didn't believe existed. I need to get home. I shouldn't even wait for the coffee. I got to my feet and gathered my things. Opening my case, I stuffed them inside without worrying about the order of things. I have people counting on me, as you know. Your sisters? I met his raised brow expression and doubting tone. Yes, my sisters count on me. They always have. Don't you think it's time you focused on your life? What you need and want? You can't even consider this job without first weighing the consequences to them. That hardly seems fair. Or healthy. Look, it's just the way it's always been. Our father has been...